What's up guys? Today's video is on the Sony CyberShot RX10 IV review. The Sony CyberShot RX10 IV is a premium all-in-one bridge camera with a 20-megapixel 1-inch sensor and a long-range 20 to 600mm equivalent zoom. Styled like a small DSLR, the RX10 IV's 20.1-megapixel XMOR-RS sensor uses a stacked architecture, with on-chip memory and image processing enabling particularly high readout speeds. This allows a silent high-speed electronic shutter that practically eliminates subject distortion from rolling shutter artifact, while offering speeds as high as 1/32 seconds, considerably faster than the 1 divided by 2000 seconds top speed of the conventional mechanical shutter. Crucially, the sensor gains on-chip phase detection for autofocus, with 315 focus points that cover 65% of the image area. Sony's high-density AF tracking technology allows the camera to cluster groups of small focus points around a subject that it detects to be moving for maximum accuracy. You can allow the camera to choose the focus area on its own, or switch to flexible spot mode that allows you to specify the AF point yourself. Face detection is also available, with the ability to focus specifically on your subject's eyes. Sony claims the focus speed is the fastest in camera history, at just 0.03 seconds. Sony's latest Beyonce X processor provides the horsepower for the headline 24 FPS shooting mode, with a spectacular buffer of 110 RAW files, or 249 JPEGs. If you don't such speed, and let's face it, most of the time you won't, the camera can be set to shoot at 10 FPS or 3.5 FPS. The sensitivity range runs from ISO 112800, with extended ISO 64 and 80 options also available. The 20 to 600mm equivalent Zeiss Vario Sonar T-Zoom has a maximum aperture of f divided by 2.4-4, but the drop-off through the zoom range is pretty abrupt. It hits f divided by 2.8 at 28mm equivalent, f divided by 3.2 at 35mm, f divided by 3.5 at 60mm, and then holds f divided by 4 from 100mm through to the 600mm end. The aperture can be stopped down to f divided by 16 1/3 steps, although in some modes it won't go beyond f divided by 11. On a 1-inch sensor you won't want to go past f divided by 8 anyway, for fear of excessive diffraction blur. Not surprisingly, the lens is complex with its 18-element, 13-group design including 8 extra low-dispersion glass elements and 1 super ED element to minimize chromatic aberrations. 6 aspheric elements are employed, of which 2 are made from ED glass. Sony says its built-in optical stabilization allows hand-holding at shutter speeds up to 4 stops slower than would otherwise be possible without getting blurred images due to camera shake. Close-up capability is decent. The lens can focus just 3 cm from the front element at wide angle, dropping to 72 cm at the tele end. At this point it offers approximately 2:1 equivalent magnification. Quirkily, though, the minimum range is rather longer in the middle of the zoom range, reaching 140 cm at the 250mm position. The lens also lacks a built-in ND filter. This is likely to be of concern to videographers who want to keep shutter speeds low for smooth-looking motion and bright light. They might be better served by the Panasonic FC2000. However, screw-in filters can be mounted using a standard 72mm thread, and a bayonet fit hood is supplied. Sony has included a decent array of photographic features, including its auto-stitching sweep panorama mode alongside multi-shot noise reduction and high dynamic range modes. For beginners, there's a small but sensible selection of subject-specific scene modes, together with a conventional full auto mode. Quite a few common features are missing, however. These include in-camera RAW conversion, an intervalometer, time-lapse movie creation, or even multiple aspect ratios for stills shooting. You just get a choice of 3:2 or 16:9. On a camera this ambitious, these are pretty glaring omissions. Unlike some other models, the RX10 IV isn't compatible with Sony's add-on apps, so you can't install additional features either. Wi-Fi is built in, allowing remote control of the camera from a smartphone or tablet using Sony's FreePlay Memories mobile app. This offers a decent level of manual control, but, oddly, doesn't allow you to change the aperture remotely. Instead, it honors the position of the aperture ring, which would make more sense were it not for the fact that you can override the exposure compensation dial setting. On a more positive note, it's super easy to send your favorite images to your phone for sharing, simply by pressing the FN button during playback. It's also possible to geotag your images as you shoot using your phone's GPS, via the RX10 IV's newly added Bluetooth. It's just a shame this connection can't be used for other functions such as remote control, as it can on Canon cameras. When it comes to video, Sony has provided a typically comprehensive set of options. The RX10 IV can record in 4 Kelvin resolution at 25 fps and at bit rates of 100 Mbps or 50 Mbps, while Full HD footage can be captured at a wide range of settings up to 100 fps and 100 Mbps. Peaking and zebra pattern displays are available to aid focusing and exposure judgment, and Sony's picture profiles are onboard. This includes S-Log Gamma for easier color grading post-production. Both microphone and headphone sockets are built in for sound recording, and footage can be output to an external recorder over HDMI. The camera can even simultaneously output low-resolution proxy footage, enabling easier in-the-field editing using relatively low-powered devices such as smartphones. It's also possible to extract 8-megapixel stills from 4 Kelvin footage. Sony has also included a dedicated slow-motion video mode, marked HFR on the mode dial. This allows you to record at 250, 500 or 1000 fps, giving 5x, 10x or 20x slow motion, but with progressively decreasing pixel dimension. Its interface is distinctly non-intuitive. Focus is fixed at the start of recording, and the camera locks up for a while as it records the footage to card. Even so, this is a pretty addictive feature to have on board for filming subjects such as wildlife. Sony CyberShot RX10 IV, build and handling. Thanks to its size and SLR-style design, the RX10 IV generally handles very well. Its hand grip is large and comfortable, while the large lens barrel nestles snugly in your left hand. Unusually, with 3 control rings on the lens to control the aperture zoom and manual focus, shot-to-shot operation is spread evenly between your hands. Videographers will be pleased to find that the aperture ring can be set to clickless operation using a switch beneath the barrel. It's also possible to choose which way around the 2 lens rings are assigned to zoom and focus, along with the direction they operate. Sony has covered the rest of the body with buttons and dials, many of which can be customized to suit the user. I left the C2 button to its default of drive mode, but rather than use the painfully positioned C1 button to change ISO, I set the vertical rear dial to do so directly. I also configured the button in its center to activate focus area selection, set up in this way. And with the option of using the touchscreen to move the AF area as well, I found the RX10 IV very usable indeed. However, the touchscreen itself feels very underutilized. It can't be used to access the menu or change any settings, and in playback it's limited to double tapping to zoom into the image, then scrolling around. Sony CyberShot RX10 IV Autofocus. When faced with static subjects, the RX10 IV autofocuses instantly, silently, and accurately. It does so regardless of the zoom position, or where you place the focus point, as long as it isn't towards the edges of the frame, beyond the phase detection area. It also continues to work in remarkably low light. It just slows down a bit. But in a way, this isn't really what we're worried about. Instead, the big question is whether the continuous AF works well enough to justify the £400 premium over the RX10 III. The answer to that is yes, but with some caveats. I tested the AFC system by shooting trains and wildlife to see how well it works with both predictable and erratic movement. As with the Alpha 9, I found it performed best by setting the camera to wide area AF mode, allowing it to first identify the moving subject and then track it. With a large and easily identifiable subject, it does this with ease, maintaining near-perfect focus during extended bursts. It's mesmeric to see the tightly clustered green AF squares dance around the viewfinder to follow a moving subject across the frame. Even with erratically moving wildlife, the camera does a remarkably good job. Its hit rate isn't quite as high in terms of getting pixel-sharp shots. Instead, it often seems to lose track slightly for 3 or 4 frames, then snap back into perfect focus for a similar length sequence. Even then, those slightly out-of-focus shots would be usable for small prints or social media. Compared to DSLRs or high-end CSCs, the RX10 IV's main disadvantage is that it seems to stop working sooner when light levels fall, failing to pick up moving subjects, especially against complex backgrounds. So, not surprisingly, it won't replace a high-end DSLR kit with a 600mm prime when the going gets really tough. But if you shoot in relatively decent light, then it will perform admirably. This is a remarkable feat for a bridge camera. Performance. In pretty much every other respect, the RX10 IV also performs very well. It takes a moment to start up and extend the lens after flicking the power switch to the on position, but thereafter it responds almost instantly to any control input. The huge buffer means you'll have to work the camera very hard before it comes close to slowing down. Indeed, I only found it kept me waiting when writing footage to card in the HFR video mode. Sony's color rendition is, as usual, perfectly pleasant, if a little on the uninspiring side. With naturally colorful subjects on a bright day, the camera's JPEGs are really quite attractive. But what it can't do is add some warmth and punch to your shots in less inspiring lighting conditions. Instead, it offers up slightly flat results, aided and abetted by an auto white balance system that veers towards the cool side. In most cases, a little tweaking of the files in post-processing can perk them up considerably. And as usual, you'll get the best results if you're prepared to shoot and post-process raw. If, above all else, you want the prettiest out-of-camera JPEGs, then Canon's PowerShot G3X does better, but it's so compromised operationally that I find it hard to recommend. Zoom in further and its ability to describe superfine detail decreases. But even so, it gives much better results at 600mm equivalent than I'd expect. Just bear in mind that diffraction softening becomes significant at f/8. I'd advise against setting anything smaller. Video. On paper, the RX10 IV is an extremely capable video camera, with a feature list as long as your arm. You get full manual control over exposure and can zoom or refocus while recording, while the compatibility with Sony's picture profiles and S-Log gamma modes is great for post-processing. It takes excellent footage too, which is packed full of detail due to Sony's full-frame readout that oversamples every single frame. The main irritation, ironically, comes from the lack of control Sony provides over autofocus. Unless the focus mode switch is set to manual, the camera always uses continuous AF, readjusting focus as and when it sees fit. You can use the touchscreen to direct its attention towards a new subject, but you have little control over how quickly it adjusts the focus. In principle, there's an AF drive speed menu item with a choice of 3 settings: fast, standard, and slow, but in any given one the readjustment speed varies widely. Sometimes it's slow and considered, at other times it's very quick. It would be nice to have a bit more predictability in this respect. Of course, most serious videographers will probably use manual focus anyway. Image quality. Sony has equipped the RX10 IV with the same 20-megapixel 1-inch sensor it used in the RX100V, and is very similar to that in the RX10 III, not to mention an array of other compact cameras from various brands. It's pretty much a known quantity now, and performs much as on those other cameras. Without an optical low-pass filter, the sensor can record really fine detail at low ISOs, and still produces decent results at ISO 16.0 or more. Crucially, though, that huge long 20 to 600mm lens keeps pace. Just as long as you don't stop down too far, you'll get obvious diffraction blurring at f/8 and beyond. ISO and noise. Pixel level detail is excellent at low ISOs, but, as is usual from a 1-inch sensor, you don't have to boost the sensitivity much for noise and noise reduction to have an impact. That said, you'll get decent levels of fine detail up to ISO 800 or so, which is particularly important when using the long end of the zoom, where you need to keep shutter speeds high to combat camera shake and subject movement. Once you go beyond ISO 16.0, you'll need to stop thinking in terms of pixel level detail and consider the image as a whole. And on these terms, I'd be quite happy shooting at ISO 64.0 for social media use or smaller prints to perhaps 9x6 in. But ISO 12800 is a step too far, unless there's no other choice. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more videos, hit the subscribe button. And if you have something to say, please leave a comment.